I want to start today by setting a scene.
Mhm.
And it's a scene that I think is going to feel, well, uncomfortably familiar to pretty much everyone listening.
Mhm.
So picture this. It's, I don't know, 11:00 p.m. The house is finally quiet. You're lying in bed, you're staring at the ceiling, and your body is just exhausted, but your mind is like on a racetrack. It's just going.
Right, the replay loop.
The replay loop.
Yeah.
You are replaying a conversation from 4 hours ago. You know, maybe it was with your boss, maybe it was your partner, maybe it was just some stranger who stole your parking spot. And you have this heavy, sinking pit in your stomach. It's like hot, but it's also heavy. It's not just anger anymore. It's the feeling that comes after the anger.
The hangover.
The emotional hangover. That
Mhm.
is exactly it. It's that toxic cocktail of guilt and shame and this like creeping suspicion that you failed, you lost your cool, you raised your voice, you weren't the bigger person.
Yeah.
And now you're just lying there thinking, why am I like this? Why can't I just be, zen?
It's the universal feedback loop, isn't it? We explode or we, seethe internally, and then we immediately turn the weapon on ourselves. We judge our reaction far more harshly than we ever judge the event that actually caused it.
Right. And I feel like society just hands us this script from the time we're like toddlers. The whole narrative is anger is a failure state.
A moral failing.
A moral failing, exactly.
Yeah.
If you were more mature, more spiritually evolved, or just, had better character, you wouldn't get angry. We treat anger like this weed in the garden of our personality, something you have to just pull out, poison, and throw away.
It is a very, very pervasive belief. But the research stack we're diving into today, it challenges that narrative so aggressively. In fact, if there's one core thesis to take away from all the sources we've analyzed, it's that we have been looking at anger entirely backward.
Backward how?
The sources suggest that by demonizing anger, we are actually, and this is the key, we are disarming our own survival system.
That is a massive claim. Because let's be honest, nobody likes feeling angry. It feels chaotic. It feels out of control. But you're saying the sources argue anger isn't a bad emotion.
They argue that bad and good are just the wrong labels entirely. It's a category error. Anger is simply energy. And to be really specific, it is energy responding to a threat. That is the definition we need to anchor ourselves in for this whole deep dive.
Energy responding to a threat.
Correct.
Okay.
And to really unpack the mechanics of this, because it is a mechanism, not a sin, we are going to look at it through a lens that might surprise some of our listeners a little bit. We're going to use the astrological archetype of Mars.
Okay, I can literally hear the brakes screeching for some people right now. They're thinking, astrology? Wait, I thought we were digging into psychology and neuroscience here. So let's just set the ground rules. We are not reading horoscopes today, are we?
Not at all. Not even close. We aren't predicting your future or telling you if you're going to meet a tall, dark stranger. In the context of this deep dive, we are treating Mars as a shorthand. It's a symbol for a specific circuit in your nervous system.
Okay.
You can call it the sympathetic nervous system's fight response. You can call it the id. In Jungian psychology, it's a core archetype. Mars is just the name the ancients gave to the function of defense.
So Mars is the bodyguard.
Mars is the bodyguard. That is the perfect analogy. And our mission today is to understand the bodyguard's operating protocols. Because if you don't understand why the bodyguard is suddenly tackling people at the party, you're going to think you're crazy.
Right, or that your bodyguard is drunk or something.
Exactly. You're going to think you're broken. But once you understand the protocol, you stop being hijacked by the anger and you start using it as data.
I love that distinction. Data, not demons. So let's get into the machinery of this. Let's start with the physiology, because the sources make a really, really big deal about the speed of this energy. Why does anger feel so much faster than, say, sadness or grief? It feels electric.
Speed is the defining characteristic of Mars energy. It's its signature. If you look at the text, they all emphasize that Mars operates faster than thought.
Faster than thought.
It operates faster than emotion.
Yeah.
And it is certainly absolutely faster than meaning.
Okay, faster than meaning. That's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it. That means I'm reacting before I even know why I'm reacting.
Precisely. And that is entirely by design. It's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
Let's use a really primal analogy to make this click. Imagine you are a prehistoric human. You're walking through the tall grass. You hear a snap to your left.
Okay.
Mars is the mechanism that makes your body jump, that floods your veins with adrenaline, and makes your spear go up before your conscious brain identifies the word tiger.
Because if I waited for my conscious brain to, process the visual data, reference it against my internal library of tigers, and then calculate the probability of being eaten.
You'd be lunch. You're already gone. Logic is slow. Logic is metabolically expensive. It requires caloric energy and processing time. Survival has to be fast. Mars is a reflex.
A reflex?
The source material compares it to touching a hot stove. You don't touch the stove, feel the heat, send a memo up to the brain, have a committee meeting about the pros and cons of burning flesh, and then decide to move.
No, your hand is gone before you even think hot.
Your hand recoils before your brain even registers the word. That's Mars. It's an impact response.
Which brings us to the advice we've all been given since we were in kindergarten. Just count to 10, take a deep breath, just walk away.
Oh, the well-intentioned but often complete failure of counting to 10.
Why does that fail so often? I mean, really, is it just that we lack willpower in that moment?
No, it's not a willpower issue at all. It's a timing issue. It's physiology. By the time you are even forming the thought, I should count to 10, the event has already happened in your body.
It's too late.
It's way too late. Mars is already deployed, the chemical cascade, the cortisol, the adrenaline, it's already in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
The source material makes a really crucial point here. Anger was never meant to be negotiated with.
Wow.
Biologically speaking, if a rock is falling toward your head, you don't negotiate with gravity. You move. Mars is designed to respond immediately, without discussion, to ensure survival.
So when I'm screaming at a guy who cut me off in traffic and then 10 minutes later I'm sitting in my driveway thinking, why on earth did I do that? That was so irrational. I'm basically judging a survival mechanism with a logical yardstick.
You're judging a reflex with the part of your brain that wasn't even online when the reflex happened. You're trying to fight a physiological structure with a moral argument.
It's an unfair fight.
It's a completely unfair fight that you will always lose. It's not that you lack discipline. It's that Mars lives in the body. It lives in the amygdala in the nervous system. Logic lives up in the prefrontal cortex. And when that alarm bell rings, the body effectively cuts power to the prefrontal cortex to conserve energy for the fight.
So you literally cannot think your way out of it in that split second.
You can't. You're not designed to. Thinking is a liability in that moment.
That is incredibly validating. I mean, it doesn't mean I should scream at people in traffic, but it explains why the impulse is so powerful. It's not a character flaw. It's a wiring reality. My bodyguard is just doing his job a little too enthusiastically.
It's not a flaw. It's a feature. The problem is that in modern life, the tigers aren't tigers anymore.
Yeah.
They are emails with a certain tone.
Right.
They are passive-aggressive comments from a mother-in-law. They are dirty socks on the floor for the 5th time. But Mars, the ancient bodyguard, he doesn't know the difference. Mars just knows threat detected, deploy weaponry.
So we have this bodyguard, and he's a little trigger happy because the world has changed, but he hasn't.
His programming is ancient.
But the sources, they go deeper than just the biology. They bridge this into our psychology by introducing another major player on the board, the moon.
Yes. And this is where the framework gets really elegant and I think incredibly profound. If Mars is defense, the moon is safety.
Okay, so the moon in astrology, that typically represents the mother archetype, right? Or our internal sense of home, our emotional world.
Exactly. The moon represents emotional regulation, comfort, being held, feeling nurtured, and the ability to, and this is a key phrase from the text, feel without urgency.
Feel without urgency. What does that mean?
It means that when your moon function is working well, when it's healthy, you can feel sad, or you can feel scared, or you can feel vulnerable, and deep down, you know you're going to be okay. You feel safe enough to feel the feeling.
Okay, so there's a container for it.
There's a container. You know that the feeling won't annihilate you.
So what is the relationship then between the bodyguard, Mars, and our sense of safety, the moon?
This is maybe the most profound insight in the entire source stack. It says, I'm paraphrasing here, anger does not become dominant in people who feel safe.
Wow. Can you say that again?
Anger does not become dominant in people who feel safe.
That just stops me in my tracks.
Yeah.
Because it implies the opposite is also true.
It does. Becomes dominant in people whose emotional safety, their moon function, was inconsistent, deficient, or completely broken, usually in childhood.
So we're talking about a kind of substitution, like a vacuum in the system that has to be filled.
Exactly. Think about a child. If a child falls and scrapes their knee and they have a safe, attuned parent, what do?
They cry.
They cry. Crying is vulnerable release. Sadness requires safety. You need to know, on a primal level, that if you fall apart, someone will be there to catch you, or at least to sit with you. But what happens if that parent screams at them for crying? Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh, yeah.
Or what if the parent is just not there, emotionally or physically?
And crying is dangerous.
Yeah.
Or it's just useless. It doesn't get you anywhere.
Right. So the system learns. It learns that vulnerability leads to rejection, or that fear leads to being ignored.
Mm.
The system has to create a workaround. It needs an outlet for that pain and that fear, and Mars steps in. Not because it's healthy, but because it is always available.
And Mars doesn't need permission. Mars doesn't need a hug.
No, Mars takes the room. The source material breaks down this exchange really clearly. Sadness requires safety. Fear requires space to process. Vulnerability requires trust. But anger. Anger requires none of those things.
Wow.
Anger creates its own boundary. It pushes people back. It forces them to listen, or at the very least to stop what they're doing. It gets a result.
It's the protector persona.
Yes, the sources are very clear on this. Chronic anger is almost always a bodyguard for hurt.
That just reframes everything for me when you see someone who is always angry, that guy at the office who snaps at everyone, or the person in the comment section who is just spewing vitriol.
They are almost certainly protecting a profound fragility. Their system decided a long, long time ago that sad wasn't safe, but mad got results. It's actually quite tragic, really.
It is.
They are projecting this immense strength, yelling and posturing, but behind that shield is a nervous system that is just terrified of being hurt again.
It makes you look at what we call toxic behavior so differently. Not to excuse it. I mean, the behavior is still damaging to others.
Of course.
But to understand the mechanics behind it, it's a maladaptive survival strategy.
It's an outdated software update.
Yeah.
That Get Angry program worked when they were 7 and had to protect themselves. But it's destroying their marriage now that they're 40.
So that's the exploder, the person whose Mars is very visible. But what about the other side of the coin? Because I know there are listeners thinking, well, I don't have a temper, I never get angry, I'm a peacekeeper, I'm the calm one.
Ah, yes. The myth of the calm person.
The sources have a pretty dire warning about this group, don't they?
They really do. This brings us to section 3 of our stack, which is all about compressed Mars. There is huge societal pressure, and this is especially true for women, but really for anyone in a professional or polite environment, to be chill.
To be unbothered.
Unbothered, right. We view the absence of visible anger as the presence of virtue. We think if someone is calm on the surface, they must be peaceful on the inside.
But physics is physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form.
You got it. When you swallow that impulse, when you feel that heat rise in your chest and you force it down, down, down into your stomach, it doesn't vanish. It compresses.
Okay, what does that feel like?
Think of a beach ball. You're at a pool and you're trying to hold a big inflated beach ball completely underwater. It takes a constant conscious effort to keep it there.
And eventually your arms get tired.
Your arms get tired.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the symptoms of compressed Mars. And the number one symptom, according to all our sources, is not rage. It's exhaustion.
Exhaustion, not resentment or something else.
Chronic, unexplained fatigue. Because you are burning a tremendous amount of caloric energy fighting your own nervous system 24/7. You are running a background program on your computer called Don't Explode, and it's secretly using 80% of your CPU at all times.
That explains so much. I think so many people feel that bone-tired feeling and assume it's just work or they need more iron, but it might actually be emotional holding.
It's a huge energetic leak.
What else happens when we compress Mars?
Well, the next one is resentment. That low-level simmering bitterness where you just kind of hate everyone a little bit. The world just feels annoying.
It's a sighing, the eye rolling.
Yes, exactly. Which leads directly to passive aggression, which is just anger leaking out the side door because the front door is bolted shut. Sarcasm, little cutting jokes, procrastination on things for other people.
And then the big one you mentioned earlier, self-attack.
Anger turned inward. If the bodyguard isn't allowed to attack the threat out there, the energy has to go somewhere. So the bodyguard attacks the self. This is the inner critic.
So I'm so stupid, I'm worthless, I'm messed up again.
That's Mars energy. But the target is you. Depression is often described in these texts as frozen anger, or anger that has no permissible outlet.
And then I have to assume eventually the beach ball slips out from under your hands.
Inevitably, the explosion. And this is the person who is so chill for 3 years, the model employee, the perfect spouse, and then one day they flip a table because someone used the wrong font on a slide deck.
The classic straw that broke the camel's back.
We call it the accumulation, because the reaction seems wildly disproportionate to the immediate moment, to the font. But it's perfectly proportionate to the 3 years of suppression that came before it.
So, and this seems like a critical distinction, calmness is not always regulation.
No. That is maybe the most vital thing for our listeners to understand. True regulation is peace. It's when you actually feel safe, so Mars is asleep in his chair. Suppression is silence under strain. Mars is awake, he is screaming, and he is gagged. And that is not peace.
Okay, so we've established that we all have this Mars function. Trying to suppress it makes us sick and exhausted. But here's the practical problem I see. We don't all get angry at the same things. What sets me off might not bother you at all. You know, I might go crazy if someone is late, and you might not care in the slightest.
Right, and this brings us to what I think is the most practical, actionable part of the source material, using the Mars signs as a diagnostic tool.
This is the user manual for your specific bodyguard.
Exactly. In astrology, the sign your Mars is in doesn't tell you how mean you are or how bad your temper is. It tells you where your boundary lives. It identifies the specific type of threat your system is uniquely wired to detect.
I really want to walk through these slowly because I think listeners will have these aha moments. They'll recognize themselves or their partners or their kids in these descriptions. It's almost like a taxonomy of triggers.
Let's do it. It's incredibly illuminating.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning with Aries. Mars is technically at home here, right? What does that mean?
Yes, Aries is the archetype of the warrior, so Mars is in its natural element. This is Mars in its purest, most undiluted form. And the trigger for a Mars in Aries is, in one word, obstruction.
Obstruction. So like someone literally standing in your way or a traffic jam.
It could be that literal, yeah. A slow driver in the fast lane is the quintessential Mars in Aries trigger. But think bigger. It's anything that impedes forward momentum. It's bureaucracy that delays your project. It's a person who won't give you a straight answer when you need to make a decision.
So it's that feeling of, I need to move, I need to go, and you are stopping me. That's the threat.
That is the fundamental threat. And the reaction is usually, well, it's not subtle. It's a flash of heat. It's quick, it's direct, it's loud. And then, importantly, it's usually over just as fast.
You don't hold a grudge.
Not usually. The goal wasn't to hurt you. The goal was to get the wall out of the way. Once the path is clear, they're on to the next thing. They've probably already forgotten about it.
Okay, so let's contrast that with the next sign, Taurus.
A completely different animal. Taurus reacts to pressure. Taurus is the bull. It governs stability, resources, in its own deliberate pace. If you try to rush a Taurus, you are attacking their core sense of safety.
So for Aries, speed is the goal. But for Taurus, being forced to speed up is the threat.
Precisely. If you try to rush an Aries, they're thrilled. Finally, let's go. If you rush a Taurus, they will dig their heels in and slow down even more out of principle.
What else falls under pressure?
Changing the plan at the last minute, introducing chaos into their calm environment, demanding they skip lunch to keep working. Anything that disrupts their stable, predictable rhythm feels like a violation. They are protecting their peace.
Okay, what about the air signs? Let's go to Gemini.
Gemini is an air sign, so it lives in the mind. The trigger here is being misunderstood, or maybe even worse, being silenced.
Interesting.
A Gemini Mars's survival is tied to the accurate exchange of information and ideas. If you twist their words, if you interrupt them constantly so they can't finish a thought, or if you tell them they aren't making sense, that is a major threat.
And the absolute worst thing.
Giving them the silent treatment.
Yeah.
Refusing to talk. That's like cutting off their oxygen supply. Their anger is verbal. It's a debate. They will argue you into the ground because they need to reestablish the truth of the communication. They need the record set straight.
Okay, next up, Cancer.
The crab.
Cancer reacts to emotional threat, or more specifically, threats to the tribe. This is the quintessential mama bear or papa bear archetype.
So it's not about them directly.
They can be surprisingly passive and accommodating about things affecting just themselves.
Yeah.
But if you come for their child, their best friend, their partner, their home, they will go nuclear. The trigger is deep protectiveness.
So if you mock their feelings or threaten their loved ones.
The shell cracks and the claws come out. It's a very defensive, often highly emotional anger.
Right.
You've threatened the nest.
Makes sense. Let's move on to Leo, the lion. Leo reacts to disrespect. Leo is the archetype of the king or the queen. It's all about dignity, identity, and being seen and acknowledged. If you humiliate a Leo, if you dismiss their contribution in a meeting or treat them as if they're invisible, that is a direct attack on their very existence.
So their anger is like a roar to reclaim their dignity.
It's a roar that says, do you know who I am? It's about reestablishing their value, their sense of pride. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way necessarily. It's about fundamental self-worth.
Okay. And then we have Virgo.
Virgo reacts to disorder.
Yeah.
But it's a specific kind of disorder. It's incompetence that messes up a functioning system.
Can you give an example?
Virgo is the mechanic of the zodiac.
Wait.
They see how all the parts are supposed to work together. If you come into their finely tuned workspace and start moving tools around, or if you do a job so poorly that they have to waste time redoing it, that's the trigger.
So it's not just you're messy, it's your mess is preventing the system from working efficiently.
Exactly. They are protecting the function, the integrity of the process. Their anger often looks like sharp criticism or micromanagement. Here, move over. Just let me do it right.
Okay, now Libra. This is a tricky one. Libra is supposed to be the peacemaker, the diplomat. Do they even get angry?
Oh, absolutely. But it takes a lot, and their trigger is very specific. Unfairness. Libra is the scales of justice. If they see a genuine injustice, or someone taking way more than their share, or a power imbalance being abused, it throws their entire world into disequilibrium.
So it's more principled anger.
Often, yes. They're the ones who get angry on behalf of other people. That's not fair to her. Or they get angry at a breach of contract in a relationship. The deal was, I did the dishes, so you should do the laundry. If you break the deal, you break the Libra sense of balance.
Fascinating. Okay, let's dive into the deep end with Scorpio.
Scorpio reacts to one thing above all else, betrayal. This is a water sign, but it's deep, fixed, icy water. They value trust, loyalty, and psychological honesty above everything. If you lie to a Scorpio or reveal a secret they entrusted to you, that is a capital offense.
And Scorpio anger is, well, it's legendary, isn't it?
It is, but it's often not what people think. It's not necessarily a loud explosion. It can be cold. It's calculated. It's often a surgical strike. They are protecting their profound vulnerability by cutting off the threat permanently.
The you are dead to me energy.
That is the epitome of a Scorpio-Mars response.
Yeah.
The trust is broken, the door is closed, and it is never, ever opening again.
Okay, from the depths to the heights. Sagittarius.
Sagittarius reacts to restriction. They are the explorer, the philosopher. They need freedom, physical freedom to roam, intellectual freedom to learn, philosophical freedom to believe what they want.
So it's about feeling boxed in.
Exactly. If you try to micromanage their schedule, or tell them they can't think a certain way, or fence them in with rules they see as arbitrary, they will kick down the fence. It's a form of spiritual claustrophobia for them. Their anger often comes out as preaching, moralizing, or just physically leaving. They'll just ghost.
On to Capricorn.
Capricorn reacts to incompetence, but specifically incompetence of authority. They respect structure, rules, and hierarchy, but only if that structure is sound and the leader is competent.
So they get mad at the boss.
They get enraged if the boss is an idiot, or the rules are being applied inconsistently, or the strategic plan is clearly destined to fail. They are protecting the goal. Their anger is about, we're wasting precious time and resources because you don't know what you're doing. It's a very pragmatic, frustrated anger.
And our last two, Aquarius.
Aquarius reacts to control and being forced into conformity. They are the rebel, the individualist. They need autonomy. If you try to force an Aquarius into a social mold or use the phrase, well, that's just how we've always done it,
It's like a red flag to a bull for them.
it's an instant trigger. They will rebel, sometimes just for the sake of rebelling. They're protecting their individuality and their right to innovate. Their anger is often very detached and cold. They just unplugged from the system. Fine, I'm not playing this game anymore.
And finally, Pisces.
Pisces reacts to emotional invasion or harshness. Pisces is the most energetically porous sign. They feel everything around them. If you come at them with jagged, aggressive, loud energy, or you demand they explain their intuitive feelings in a linear, logical grid, it feels like a psychic violation.
They need their psychic space protected.
They do. They're protecting their spirit, their imagination. Their anger is often slippery. They might disappear, they might evade, or they might just get overwhelmed and flood with tears, which is its own form of defense.
Wow. Just seeing it laid out like that creates so much empathy. Because if I'm a Gemini and I get mad because you interrupted me and you're a Taurus and you got mad because I was rushing you to answer, neither of us is wrong.
Exactly. We're just two different security systems responding to two completely different but equally valid threats. If you know your trigger, you know what you value. The Gemini values truth. The Taurus values peace. The anger is just the signal flare. It's pure information.
But okay, knowing why we get angry is only half the battle. We also have to talk about how we express it. Because as you said, not everyone explodes. And the sources mention something called aspects. This seems really important because, some people implode, some people freeze.
Right. This adds the necessary layer of nuance, because you might have a Mars in Aries, which is theoretically very reactive and fiery, but you might never actually yell. Why? because in your chart, your Mars is wired up to Saturn.
Okay, wired up to Saturn. Break that down for the skeptic listening. What does that mean in practical terms?
Think of it like the wiring in a car. If Mars is the engine, the raw power, the aspects to other planets are the transmission, the brakes, the steering wheel. It's how that core Mars function interacts with all the other parts of your psyche.
Got it. Okay, so the text highlights 4 key flavors of expression. Let's run through them. First up is Mars-Saturn.
This is the one we call the weight. Saturn is the planet of restriction, time, authority, and structure. So when Mars, the gas pedal, is directly connected to Saturn, the brake, you get delayed anger.
So this is the person who freezes up in the middle of a conflict.
Yes, the threat happens. The Mars impulse says, fight, defend. But the Saturn impulse immediately says, stop. It's not safe. Be professional. Hold it in. Do not escalate.
Yeah.
So they go cold, they go silent, they appear completely calm.
But they're not.
Not at all. And then 3 hours later or 3 days later, they're in the shower and suddenly it hits them. Wait a minute, I'm furious.
Yeah.
They finally feel the anger when they feel safe and alone.
This slow burn.
Yeah.
That can be really difficult in relationships.
It's so hard because it's almost impossible to resolve a conflict 3 days later. The danger is that it just turns into this deep, quiet resentment. The key for them is learning to say, I need a minute to process this in the actual moment.
Okay, what about Mars-Pluto? That sounds intense.
It is. This is the absolute. Pluto is the archetype of power, survival, death, and rebirth. When you connect that to Mars, the anger feels absolutely life or death. It's nuclear.
So it's not just, I'm annoyed you didn't do the dishes.
No. On a subconscious level, it's your failure to do the dishes is a sign of deep disrespect that threatens the very core of our bond, and I must now annihilate this threat to my survival.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, and these people often fear their own anger because they know instinctively how powerful and destructive it can be. They feel like if they really let it out, they might burn the whole house down, so they tend to suppress until they have a massive explosion. The work for them is finding safe, high-intensity outlets for that energy.
Okay, what about Mars-Moon? We touched on this connection before, but it's a specific aspect too.
Right. We call this one the reactive. The wires between feeling, which is the moon, and fighting, which is Mars, are basically fused together. They are crossed.
Oh, what does that look like?
These are the people who cry when they get angry. Or they get aggressive and defensive when they're actually feeling sad or hurt. The anger is an instantaneous defensive shield for their vulnerability. It's a raw nerve. The slightest emotional poke can set it off.
And the last one here is Mars-Uranus.
The spark. Uranus is the planet of sudden change, electricity, and surprises. So Mars-Uranus anger is like lightning. It is sudden, explosive, shocking, and out of nowhere.
The thunderstorm.
Exactly. They are completely fine 1 second, screaming the next, and then totally fine again 5 minutes later, wondering why everyone else is still upset.
That has to be very disorienting for the people around them.
Incredibly. People are always like, where on earth did that come from?
Yeah.
But for the person with the aspect, it's just a quick, necessary discharge of electricity. Once it's out, it's out. The storm is past.
Again, I'm struck by how the point here isn't to label ourselves as bad or good for having these particular styles. It's just to know the vehicle you're driving.
That's it. If you know you have Mars-Saturn, you have to build in a pause. You give yourself permission to say, I can't talk about this right now. I need to process it. If you have Mars-Uranus, you need to learn to ground that electrical energy physically, maybe by going for a run so you don't shock everyone nearby. It's about skillful navigation.
Which brings us back full circle to the hangover, to the guilt and the shame. Because even if we understand our triggers and our style, why is the shame so deep afterwards? The sources introduced this concept that really just blew my mind. They call it late protection.
This is one of the most important healing takeaways from this entire deep dive. Late protection.
Can you explain that? It sounds so powerful.
Okay, so usually when we have one of those massive explosions that we feel deeply ashamed of, screaming over a dirty dish, for example, we feel crazy. We feel broken because the reaction, the screaming, seems so completely out of proportion to the event, the dish.
It's disproportionate. Why am I crying over a fork in the sink?
But the source material argues that it's not disproportionate at all, because that dirty dish wasn't just a dish. It was the 100th time your boundary was silently ignored. You let the first 99 slide, you suppressed, you didn't say anything because you wanted to be nice or chill. You just smiled and cleaned it up yourself.
We left the door to our house unlocked for 99 days in a row.
We left the door unlocked and the windows wide open. So by the time Mars, the bodyguard, finally wakes up and realizes the house is being looted, he can't just politely ask the intruder to leave. He has to come in with guns blazing. He has to scream to be heard because the quiet, polite no was never spoken or it wasn't heard.
So the shame we feel comes from that massive gap between the tiny immediate event and the huge reaction.
The shame comes from the fact that you left yourself unprotected for so long that your bodyguard had to use what felt like excessive force. You aren't really ashamed of the anger. Deep down, you're ashamed that you abandoned yourself.
Wow, that hits hard. So the antidote to the shame isn't to try and stop getting angry. It's to learn how to set the boundary earlier and more quietly.
Precisely. If you honor the limit at step 1, with a calm, clear, hey, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
Mars doesn't need to scream at step 100. He can just speak. The volume of your anger is directly proportionate to how long you waited to speak up for yourself.
The source also talks a lot about energy looking for movement. Because Mars is fundamentally kinetic, right? It's not a static thing.
Mars is movement. Remember, it's the energy of the fight-or-flight reflex. It literally prepares the large muscle groups to move, to run, or to fight. If you feel that surge of adrenaline and then you just sit on the couch and stew in it, that energy becomes toxic. It stagnates. It turns into anxiety and agitation.
So we need to release it. But, and this is a critical distinction, release doesn't mean violence. It doesn't mean punching a wall or yelling at a person.
No, absolutely not. That's unskilled Mars. Skillful release means motion. It means giving the energy a job to do. The source lists so many great examples. Go for a hard run, punch a pillow, put on loud music, and dance aggressively around your living room. Scrub the floor, weed the garden, burn the adrenaline.
And it also suggests that clear words are a form of movement.
Yes, this is so important. Articulating the boundary is a Mars action. Saying the words, I am not okay with this, moves the energy from being trapped inside your body to being out in the world. It breaks the internal loop of resentment.
And interestingly, it also listed making a decision.
Decision-making is pure Mars. The word decide comes from the Latin root decider, which means to cut off, to cut away all other options. When you are stuck in indecision, Mars energy just swirls and turns into anxiety. The moment you make a clear choice, even a really tough one, the energy becomes a laser. It has a direction. It flows.
So living with Mars, it's not about trying to suppress the beast in the basement. It's about giving the beast a constructive job to do.
It's about giving your bodyguard clarity. Mars wants to know 2 things and 2 things only. What is the threat and what are we doing about it? If you can answer those 2 questions, Mars calms right down. He can go back to standing at the door.
This leads us perfectly into the final section of our notes, reframing freedom. Because I think a lot of us walk around with this idea that freedom means a life without conflict, a life where we are never angry.
That's a fantasy. And it's a dangerous one because the only way to achieve it is to become completely numb. If you can't feel anger, you probably can't feel deep passion or joy either. It's the same channel. The source argues that true freedom is not never getting angry. Freedom means anger no longer owns you.
It's the difference between being the driver of the car and being locked in the trunk.
That's a perfect way to put it. The transformation we are all aiming for is converting anger from explosion into information. When you feel that heat begin to rise in your chest, instead of panicking or suppressing, you get curious. You say, oh, hello, Mars is active. Interesting. What boundary was just crossed? What do I value that is being threatened right now?
And information creates choice.
And choice is the only true freedom we have. With that information, you can choose to take a walk, to speak your boundary calmly, or to decide that this isn't a battle worth fighting. But it's a choice, not a reaction.
This has been such a powerful deep dive. I honestly feel like I need to go apologize to my own nervous system for being so hard on it for all these years.
It's a very common feeling after digging into this material.
Mhm.
But remember the core message here. You are not broken. Your system learned the fastest, most efficient way to protect you with the tools it had at the time. That isn't a flaw. It's a survival miracle.
And astrology, specifically this Mars archetype we've been using, it isn't here to excuse bad behavior or let us off the hook. It's here to remove the confusion and the shame around the mechanism.
Exactly. When the confusion is gone, you stop fighting the symptom, the anger, and you can finally start addressing the root cause, which is usually a need for better boundaries or a deeper sense of safety.
I love that. So as we wrap up, we always like to leave our listeners with a final thought, something to chew on after the deep dive is over.
The thought I'd like to leave everyone with is this. When you stop fearing your anger, you stop fighting yourself.
Say a little more about that. That's powerful.
If you view your anger as a monster, it's this alien part of you that you have to conquer, You are in a state of perpetual civil war with your own body. You are at war with your own specialized survival instincts. But if you can shift that perspective, if you can start to see Mars not as a demon, but as a loyal, if sometimes clumsy guardian who has been trying to protect you since before you even had the words to ask for help, everything softens.
It's like finally shaking hands with the bodyguard you've had locked in the basement.
Exactly. You don't have to let him run the whole meeting, but you should definitely thank him for standing at the door all these years. Understanding your Mars isn't about becoming calmer. It's about becoming whole. It's about becoming free.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for breaking all of this down with us today.
A pleasure. It's vital information.
And to everyone listening, take a breath. Be a little kinder to your Mars today. If you feel that heat rising, just pause for a second and ask, what are you trying to protect? You might be surprised by the answer. We'll see you on the next deep dive.